There were many encouraging endorsements of the ministry, and Good News Productions International actually emerged out of a real need in a cross-cultural situation and in a specific mission setting. The greatest international challenge would be to create a network of global workers to assure that all programs would be culturally accurate and Bible-based. Assessment and endorsement from those served was very important to make sure that correct strategies were being followed to meet each particular challenge. From the beginning and through the years, it has been gratifying to hear comments from around the world. I mentioned J. Russell Morris earlier, who went to China as a missionary in 1921. He said, I'll never forget this, "This is the greatest thing that has happened in our brotherhood for a long time. If we would have had something like this years ago in the Far East, things would have been different today." Ron Morris is the grandson of J. Russell Morris and has lived his entire life in Thailand. He expressed his appreciation in these words that I'll read. "Thank you for all your efforts to help the Lisu and Rawang and Lahu and others out here. It is great knowing that there is someone who specializes in these aspects of outreach, which for most of us is just a distant dream. There has been extensive use of these film strips. I was in a Lisu village in the hills of northern Thailand on a teaching trip. It was on the last night that we used the film strips made at GNPI. The people stood, they squatted, they leaned, and they bore the 50-degree weather for 2 hours, which is cold when you live in a hot climate country. When we got through, one asked if we could show the whole thing over again. Ron continued, "It really moved me and made me more determined to encourage those who are working at GNPI and those who are supporting the work there. It is my prayer," he concludes, "that God's people will rise up and support this work as it deserves to be supported." Veteran missionary to Japan, Mark Maxey, was very insightful in his comments. He said, "It is the height of arrogance or being totally naive that would cause a missionary from Africa to think he could do something for Japan. I'm here to see what you are all about." Well, following a tour and a close look at the workings of Good News Productions International, Mark Maxey concluded by stating, "Well, this ministry certainly has my stamp of approval." Dr. Donald McGavran was born in India and lived there many years as a missionary. He later became known as the father of the church growth movement and headed up and actually began the World Mission Center at Fuller Theological Seminary. Carl Lawrence of the Haven of Rest radio program and I met with Dr. McGavran as a consultant concerning the special strategy that we had designed in India. The first studio unit at Demo was actually dedicated on August 27, 1989. When I was speaking at Fuller on August 29, 1988, I also met with Dr. McGavran again to sort of give a report on the India project. His conclusion was that this is probably the most important project of this century. It is possibly the best way an impact can be made on India. A member of Parliament in Kenya made this comment, "I've seen missionaries drill wells, give food to my people, hand out clothing, but these film strips are having a greater impact than anything else." The Honorable Miriam Matimba of Ethics and Integrity in Uganda was at a special launch of a program called Promise of Love. That was on May 9th, 2002. Her opening remarks were accompanied actually by tears as she began her speech. I read, "This is fantastic. I will make sure that this is seen by every child in every school in this country." Many preachers and government leaders were among the 800 people present for the launch of an evangelistic program produced by Good News Productions International in Mexico. At the conclusion of the presentation, one preacher said, "This is the most important tool for evangelism we've ever been given." Ike Owusu was one of several elders using leadership training series that had been produced for use in Ghana. He wrote actually a long letter of thanks, but he made the observation in conclusion, "All these lessons have been very helpful. These men will all one day die, but they will still be speaking to us. Thank you very much for this great help." Well, along with written endorsements, there are other ways of confirming a ministry. The Joplin Chamber of Commerce recognized Good News Productions International as Industry of the Month in 1992. The AT&T satellite system, later purchased by Laurel Skynet, started an Uplinker of the Year award program. Good News Productions International was the only group in satellite communications that received that award 10 years in a row. Other recognition was received by missionary organizations who felt particularly blessed by the partnership we had with them. Even sacrificial giving is a form of endorsement, and I could give many examples of this. I guess I think of the couple who delayed the installation of indoor plumbing for 3 years so they could give the money they'd saved for it to a special project. Another couple volunteered 117 days just in 1 year. And they drove 65 miles one way to do landscaping and various other tasks. I think of a lady who cleaned houses in the Philippines. She had saved much of her savings, as much as possible, for many years. When she learned that the Church of Christ television program was actually going to go on the air, she decided to give all those savings to produce one of the special programs. Ruth and Gladys Dudley. They had a vision for world missions during World War II. They were actually both school teachers, but during the war they worked in a factory as well to help gather materials for the war. Rather than buy nickel candy bars during break time, they decided to start saving all their snack money for missions. They actually lived very frugally, and during their lifetimes were great friends and faithful supporters to the local church as well as world missions. They also left over $350,000 for kingdom work at the time of their deaths. There was a former Hindu man in India who believed in a videotape program so much that at his own expense, he went and had 600 copies made just of that one program to hand out to people where he lived. It was a program actually by the late Dr. V.J. Lal on the incarnation of Christ. Though Good News Productions International has never sought the praise of mankind, there is encouragement in these endorsements. Such endorsements, I think, also confirmed that the strategic planning in bringing about a ministry is very important in achieving the goals set before us. And we'll be looking at that in the next section.